Hello everyone, and welcome to Everyday Sublime. This is your host, Josh Summers, and I'm very happy to have you here with me today. This podcast endeavors to explore a full spectrum spirituality, and that includes all the messy bits of our life, the bright and beautiful bits of our life, and I try to formulate an approach to spiritual practice, whether it's yoga or meditation, in a way that unifies these two and brings us into a sense of unified wholeness of being. So today's episode is a Dharma talk that I gave last week, and it kicks off really the fall 2021 season in the online practice community that Terry and I facilitate called the Riverbird Sangha. And in this talk, I really try to celebrate the anniversary of our Sangha with a metaphor for the awakened mind that Ajahn Chah gave. And the metaphor is of a still forest pool. So I'll be reflecting on that and how it relates to the practices of good relationship and good perception that we develop on the path. In addition, I give an overview for the progression of meditative development that I'll be reflecting on this fall. And this is going to be a series of sort of shorter reflections about meditation practice with specific instructions that really develop and prepare the mind for deep insight. So the development begins with the alignment around the wise qualities of the heart that are referred to in various spiritual traditions, but in Buddhism, which include kindness, compassion, joy, and peace. And from approaching that the development of those qualities from both yin and yang perspectives, I will then transition the instructions or develop the instructions further into exploring what is sometimes called vipassana or insight practice. So sometime around October and into November, I'll be shifting the emphasis of the instructions for meditation into the territory of vipassana practice, again, covering both vipassana from yin and yang perspectives, the active, the receptive, the directive, and the allowing. So I'm very much looking forward to moving this audience, and particularly the members of the Sangha, through this progression. I spent last year really establishing the foundation practice that I call yin meditation, which holds the intention of just developing a good relationship to whatever goes on within your experience when you sit, namely, particularly being okay and groovy with when your mind wanders. I try to really establish that mind wandering is not a problem. It's just simply the phases of time where consciousness takes a nap. NAP. A nap stands for not a problem. So from yin meditation and also within that practice, establishing the safety of the perch, these two things together, the receptivity and the safety of the perch, really allow, I think, the more specific contemplative inquiries of vipassana to unfold in a more straightforward and easeful manner, with far less tension, far less frustration, and far less struggle. So I really invite you to join us on this journey this fall. Stay tuned on the podcast. But if you would like to practice with us directly live or through the recordings in our library online, please consider joining the Riverbird Sangha. Terry and I offer 4 classes weekly. I do a meditation on Mondays with a talk and discussion. I teach a Wednesday yin yoga class that sort of echoes on the themes of the talk. And Terry teaches a yin yoga qigong class on Tuesday and a yang yoga class on Thursday that are also very popular. And of course, if you can't make any of the live sessions, we have a deep bank of recorded classes, workshops, and tutorials in our library, which come free of access with your membership subscription. And to that point, we offer a tiered paid subscription model as well as a free beneficiary subscription option. So whatever your budget, we encourage you to practice with us, and we welcome your participation sincerely. Okay, Now, without further ado, I bring you today's talk, A Still Forest Pool. Today, it's September 13th, and this is the anniversary eve of the Sangha's conception. We began on September 14th last year, and Terry and I were just joking that a year and a half ago, you weren't even a twinkle in our eye. As we entered in the pandemic, we didn't know what was going on. But this has been the direction we've wanted to move in, and you're all a huge integral part of it, obviously. And we're very grateful to have you return and continue on practicing in our practice community together. And so, just as a way to sort of commemorate this passage of our first year together, and to sort of set the tone or set the stage or point the compass direction of where we'll be moving this fall, the course of practice I'll be encouraging us to explore together throughout this fall. I thought it would be helpful to draw on a metaphor that I heard years ago from, it was actually in a book, but it was from the Thai forest teacher, so Ajahn Chah, this great teacher of the last century from Thailand, who compared the development of the mind in meditation to a still forest pool. A still forest pool. And I want to share with you the passage in which he mentions this. And then I want to just offer a few reflections around it. And then from those reflections, give you a sense of the direction where I'm going to be taking or pointing us this fall in the Sangha. So this is from Ajahn Chah. He says, "Try to be mindful and let things take their natural course." This is in meditation, of course. So in meditation, try to be mindful and let things take their natural course. Then your mind will become still in any surrounding, like a clear forest pool. All kinds of wonderful, strange, and rare animals will come to drink at the pool, and you will clearly see the nature of all these things. You'll see many strange and wonderful things come and go, but you will be still. This is the happiness of the Buddha. Now, there's a lot there, and in some sense, what I'll be reflecting on and teaching from over the course of the fall will be unpacking a lot of what's intimated in this passage. But in terms of what Terry and I within the Sangha are really trying to support and provide as an opportunity here, one way to think about it is that we offer a suite of practices, the meditation, the yoga, qigong, that are in many ways practices that are pointing us, all of us, into the still nature of the mind that's already here. We're learning to see the conditions of our experience as we sit, and recognize thoughts as thoughts and sounds as sounds. And in seeing things come and go, we can start to intimate and intuit a deeper dimension, deeper reservoir of stillness through which all of this changing, flowing experience comes and goes. And this is really going to be a central feature or central theme of the fall is to first conceptually understand what kind of stillness this passage is referring to. Because you could say there's many kinds of stillnesses. There's stillness of thought, there's stillness of environment, or stillness of a situation. But this passage and this path is pointing to a different kind of stillness. It's a stillness of consciousness relative to the things that are coming and going within consciousness. And what's truly, I think, tremendously powerful about the contemplative path
is that you don't have to agree with what I just said. You don't have to believe anything of what I just said. The path, in some respects, is a collection of tools and tips, practices to realize the truth of that, to either verify or reject the truth of that statement in your own heart. So I remember when I was reading from the Kalama Sutta before we broke, about how we don't want to go by what someone else has said, or what an old book or text has said, or what some charismatic guru has said, but we want to know these things for ourselves and discover the essence of the experience ourselves. And to that end, in exploring stillness together, and then the wisdom that is born from that kind of contemplative stillness, my hope, and our hope, I should say, is that just like we all need water for our survival, we all need to drink water in some form for our survival. We need air, we need food, we need shelter, we need water. And that water becomes a nourishment. And in my practice, and in talking to many friends and some of you on the path, the experience of stillness, of recognizing the inherent stillness of the mind, can become a tremendously nourishing dimension or feature of one's life. There's so many things that can agitate, aggravate in the world, in our own minds, and being able to recognize this feature of our being can become a tremendous source of renewal and energy and nourishment on the path, and meaning on the path through our life. So that's one level of what I see of how this Sangha, this practice community, holds this intention of offering reflections about the path, offering tools and tips and practices about the path, so that we're all supported together in looking for ourselves, looking internally within ourselves, really examining, wrestling sometimes with things within ourselves. But ultimately, the fruit that's born of this process is the recognition of the stillness, of the still forest pool. And so then, this is what I just was talking about, I would call the experience of intrapersonal stillness, meaning the stillness within each of us that we uncover and recognize. And in a more maybe poetic sense, I also see the community that forms here, and the sort of the space that's held within the Sangha as a kind of still forest pool within which we can join together here and reflect and listen to reflections on teachings. We can reflect on what other people reflect back about the teachings. And in all that reflection, we can fill in and flesh out the nature of how we come to understand our own hearts, our own minds, and this dimension of stillness. So I just would want to acknowledge the sort of the full year now, and the deepening that I sense occurring within this group, and I just want to appreciate that and celebrate it in a way. This is when we started a year ago, we had no idea what people would be showing up, if we'd be talking to a bunch of crickets, and so it's really with a deep sense of appreciation for your practice and the sincerity that you all bring to your practice. That is, I think, really the fiber that is making this experience quite powerful for us and for many of you that I've heard from. So thank you. Now, this fall, if I were to reflect back retroactively around the last year, I would say the two big themes that I've tried to address and reflect upon in different ways are the themes of what I tend to refer to as yin meditation, and the themes around the challenges of meditative practice or contemplative practice. And the challenges, if you recall from the beginning of this calendar year, I referred to them as they are in the tradition. They're referred to as the hindrances, the difficult energies that have been documented through the centuries of practitioners that have applied the tools of practice to their life and encountered these difficulties. That there's a way to work with these so that the obstacles that turn up, the challenges that turn up, become the very energy, the very conditions through which the path unfolds and opens further. So the desiring mind, the mind that has cravings, the mind that has its dislikes, its aversions, its even its hatreds, its envies, the confused mind, the cloudy mind, the restless mind, the agitated mind, the doubtful mind, all of those energies that can agitate, that can bring great confusion as we practice. I wanted to normalize them so they're not seen in any way as a problem. I wanted to normalize them to the extent that I want to really help you begin to work with that energy so that that you weren't frustrated, put off, or sensing that there's something wrong with you personally for experiencing difficult energy in the practice. Difficult energy is inevitable on this path. But the brilliance of the path is that when we encounter difficult energy, which I loosely refer to as disharmony, the path provides us with multiple tools, multiple reflections, multiple ways of working with those challenges to harmonize them, whereby, and this is what the connection between stillness, when those difficult energies are harmonized and understood really in a contemplative way, it's that understanding of their difficulty that catalyzes the recognition of stillness. In other words, no one encounters the inherent nature of stillness in the mind without coming to terms with the difficulties. You can't bypass them. You can't go around them. But by developing, and I would say developing upon skill sets you probably already have, because you have all made it to an adulthood in your life. So you've worked with, I know many of you worked with challenges and on a variety of different levels. And we can take the learning we already have acquired, and I would say refine it at a deeper level into the structure of the mind, where we can start to see more on a micro level or a really up close, granular level at how a difficulty will arise, how that will condition our experience, our perception of things. And in understanding that, we can start to see through the very hypnotizing trance of that presentation. We don't deny that presentation. We don't annihilate it. We can just start to see its ephemeral, transitory nature. And when you see that over and over again, it starts to lose its sting internally. And I would say another dimension of our being starts to be felt, not as a sensation so much, but just as a field of presence that is capable of holding these transitory, ephemeral, changing experiences that are coming and going. So that was a little bit more on the challenges of practice I wanted to mention, or I planned to mention, but connected to that is the idea of yin meditation, that rather than often what people try to do is they try to focus their attention quite strongly in meditation. They try to become still. They might hold the view that you have to focus on your breath or repeat your mantra and have your mind trained in an unwavering way on the object of attention. That's how you get to stillness, focusing and drilling into one thing. But that often that type of practice, that approach to practice often carries with it a real charge of harshness. And that harshness, while it can be capable of muscling you into a kind of a still state, it's a very fragile experience. And it's one that's often it tends to fall apart as soon as the effort applied can't be sustained anymore. Meaning, like once you're not practicing formally, that sense of stillness quickly is scattered or lost. So my premise, and this is what I want to ease us into this fall season, my premise is that stillness is more readily accessed in general. And this is a general statement, but my hunch is that stillness is more readily accessed when there's much more ease and gentleness within our mind's sort of orientational intention towards the practice. So when we orient our attention and intention to being with ourselves and looking internally, the gentler, kinder, softer, more receptive we can be, it allows us to settle through the inevitable challenges that come up, or settle within the inevitable challenges that come up, and understand them more, to help promote this deeper recognition of stillness, the stillness of presence. So yin meditation, the challenges of practice, are really my best intro to this path that we covered this last year. And my intention has been to help everyone establish a really familiar foundation of that feeling of being receptive and gentle to whatever may arise while you're practicing, with the caveat that if something arises outside of your tolerance threshold, if some experience that becomes very strong, overwhelming, or just that if you stay with it too long, it's going to produce that kind of overwhelm and flooding experience. In those cases, it's always important to remember that you have a perch of attention to bring your awareness back to, so you can play your edge with the experience. And I think that's a hugely important piece, so that you don't feel like you have to be present to everything. That would be too extreme. But with the domain, or within the kinds of experiences that you are able to work with, that you find tolerable, you may not find them pleasant, but you find them tolerable. That's the growth edge, where I will encourage you to practice the yin qualities of gentleness, receptivity, and kindness. And so I'll be offering a few more reflections about this kind of a theme for the next couple of weeks. And if you have time, if you go into the library on the Sanghas, go into the library section of our website and look under workshops. There's a workshop called Yin to Yang meditation that I gave on Saturday. And that's available to all Sangha members for free. So please avail yourself of that. That's another a series of reflections I gave on this theme that I'm going to be developing for a few weeks. But from this establishment of receptivity, kindness, gentleness to experience this, really trying to establish a heart of non-contention. It's a word I remember Ajahn Amaro using that I really resonated with myself. What does that mean to have a heart of non-contention? It doesn't mean you don't like everything, or it doesn't mean you do like everything. It's just that you're intending not to pick up unnecessary conflicts. You're intending not to get entangled with unnecessary tensions. So this is a practice. But as that energy of receptivity, allowance, and kindness strengthens, it's natural to feel times when your experience becomes quite, and different words will resonate with different people, but your experience will tend to settle down like a vessel of water when it's not being agitated. If it's just put down, the vessel of water comes to stillness. This is another metaphor that's often used for the mind in meditation. We don't have to do anything to this vessel of water other than just let it be placed down and let it come to rest. When that happens, our minds become still, or we recognize, I should say, the consciousness that is still relative to the content of consciousness moving within our consciousness. Now, that's a clunky, I'm listening to myself, that's a clunky phrase to use consciousness 3 different ways. But we have, and this is, and so if it's confusing, not to worry, this is really the theme I'm going to be opening up over several weeks, really for the first 3 months this fall and into November, or at least into November, September, October, November. But as the mind becomes quieter, or as we recognize the quiet dimension of the mind, then our ability to perceive the nature, the contemplative nature of our experience becomes sharper. And this is the territory of what in Buddhism is referred to as vipassana meditation. Vipassana is a fancy word that is used to describe a style of meditation that emphasizes simply clear perception, clearly seeing sounds as sounds, sensations as sensations, thoughts as thoughts, feelings as feelings, tastes as tastes, smells as smells. The 6 major sense impressions or sensory data that comprise our moment-to-moment contemplative experience. And I'm keep tacking that word contemplative onto experience because we all have a whole history of other kinds of experience in different contexts. So the word experience in different contexts could refer to like the nature of a relationship, the nature of a societal problem, the nature of a power differential, the nature of international conflict. There's like that. The nature of experience could be very different in those different contexts. But in the meditative journey, the nature of experience comes down to understanding how thoughts behave, sensations behave, feelings behave, etc. And that's the territory of vipassana. So as we move along this fall, particularly in about 3 weeks, I'll start to be presenting instructions that I have received in both Burmese, Thai traditions, and in traditions in the West around tools for developing this contemplatively clear perception of vipassana meditation. But I want to begin, as I already mentioned, I want to begin this fall session with just a brief review and development of the kinds of intentions that I think support recognizing stillness in our being. And again, this is not so much technique based. This isn't so much about, getting the technique right so that you see your mind become still. It's more really tapping in to your heart's intention, your heart's, in a sense, dedicated energy, and nourishing that energy with the practice, or nurturing that energy. So the practice tonight, and I'll have a sitting shortly, but the practice building on the sort of the tenets of yin meditation, which is, again, just to review, one tenet is to establish a perch for your attention or for your awareness. So that tends to work well when a meditator chooses some neutral feature of their experience that is easy and not complicated for them to rest their attention on. So something simple, just like your hands resting on your lap, or the felt sense of your body sitting on the chair or against a couch or a cushion, or the fairly neutral. And if the sounds aren't neutral, I wouldn't choose this. But if you live in a place where there's sort of environmental sounds, like the passing of traffic and maybe car doors opening and closing, or birds chirping, or people walking by, if there's just sort of neutral, basic everyday sounds coming and going, the field of sounds can be the perch that you let your attention rest on. And from that perch, the yin practice, the yin meditation style, or the approach of yin meditation, encourages you to be receptive to what unfolds, returning to the perch anytime you need be. And as I said in the workshop on yin meditation, the primary intention around the yin practice is to be okay, or develop an okayness with the natural oscillation of consciousness, which is to be awake. Hi, I'm here. I know I'm here. I'm awake, I can say. And then the state of consciousness to be asleep, where you're sitting here, but your mind is departed into I don't say the word like in any way disparaging, but an imaginary, an inner world born out of imagination, which will be drawing from memories and histories and anticipations and anxieties. So there's this imaginary second universe that our mind departs into, our consciousness departs into, and travels within that self-generated inner universe. I just call it the dreaming state. And yin meditation from the beginning explicitly says it's okay for the consciousness to dream, and it's okay for consciousness to be present in the awake state. And the reason I really focus on this is that most people, when they come to meditation, only try to be in the awake state, and they get really frustrated with themselves when they go into the dream state. So there's this inner fight and struggle that again becomes that kind of that energy that snarls the whole process up. So if you really work with this and find that you become groovy with dreaming and waking, that's the yin emphasis, groovy with dreaming and waking, then the next addition I want to add to the practice now is this yang element that is in the phase of your experience, or in the times of your meditation when you're conscious. The light is aware on again, you know that you're here. You may be aware of all sorts of other things too, but you know that you know what's going on. You're present. In those moments, and you don't have to do this all the time, but when the light of consciousness turns on, then I would encourage you to just, from time to time, intone your intention of kindness, or intone your heart's intention for how you want to be with yourself, with your inner world, and ultimately with your outer world. And I'm just using the word kindness as a placeholder, suggestion. But I want to leave it open for all of you to find and articulate for yourself your own heart's yearning. And the closer you get to your own articulation, I think the more gravity that personalization of your intention draws you in. So in the moments when you're awake, one yang, or more specific tool, is something I've mentioned before, but I want to reiterate it because I think it's a really helpful one, which is to, I'm trying to say, not shape, not form, but to allow a gentle smile, or the energy of a smile, to suffuse across your face, or even feel a sense of a smile resonating from your heart, like you might feel if you're listening to a really good friend, someone that you care about. you're having a heart-to-heart, if you know what that's like, you have a heart-to-heart conversation and you're the listener, to feel the softness of your heart as you listen to your own experience. So that's the idea of a gentle smile. And then from the smile, and this is not like a big grin, I think of it more like an energetic softness in the face or through the eyes, or more centered in the chest. But from this intoned smile, sometimes, you don't have to do this all the time, like the smile, it's something you play with from time to time. But sometimes it can be really helpful just to ask a question of yourself. Sort of formulate a contemplative question to gently coach you in the meditation. And the question, the sort of question that I like to ask is something like, what would it mean to practice within this experience with kindness? Or what would it mean to hold this experience kindly? And just to let the question organize kind of your heart's energy, or orient it towards what's occurring. And just see what it's like. I'm not saying you have to feel kind or have a particular positive or negative or any kind of feeling state in relationship to what's going on. It's more you're orienting your own compass towards how you want to be, towards around your own value system, really. How do you value being with experience? And can you nudge yourself gently with a question to just call that forth and see how the opening with the question in a kind of an open-ended way mobilizes the relational aspects of your mind and heart towards what's occurring. So I think that's just a recap of sort of where we've been and where we're going. And I just want to leave you, before we go into the sitting, I'm debating whether to just read this in the sitting. I think I'll read it now first. This is a short passage I recently came across from a teacher that I have worked with many times. I was thinking I've probably been on more retreats with her than anybody else. And she's from Cambridge, and many of you may know her too. Narayan Levinson was I think the directing teacher at the Cambridge Insight Meditation Center. And in her new book on the heart qualities of practice, called The Magnanimous Heart, she says this, and I think this really sums up a lot of what I'm trying to reflect on in many of our sessions. She wrote, "If we practice with great intent and dedication, the practice becomes our life. Instead of practice being something we do, it's something we are. We become aware of a great secret treasure within our own hearts, an ease and peace that cannot be destroyed. Of course, this is really not a secret. It has been realized, understood, and taught by countless sages before. However, it's the key thing, however, it is a completely different thing to discover this truth for ourselves than to hear it from others. We meditate to discover that which is beyond conditions. We meditate to tame our minds and to train our hearts to discover for ourselves a peace that is truly unconditioned." And in my note card, I put an asterisk for a footnote after the word tame. So she says, we meditate to tame our minds. I asterisk to tame. I thought, tame, it's a verb that comes up. You see it in all the old teachings, the old suttas and different traditions. It sort of implies that the mind's nature on its own is like this wild animal that needs to be disciplined and tied to a post and tamed. So I made an asterisk at that word, and I said, if I were to rewrite the sentence with all due respect to Narayan, I would say, we meditate to harmonize our minds and uncover our heart of hearts. So it's not so much about changing the nature of the mind. It's about understanding and waking up to something that's embedded there already, that just is often overlooked, glanced past, not recognized, and that because of that, there's a need for a practice to uncover and recover this dimension of our heart.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed today's talk. I hope it stimulates some good reflection and exploration in your own practice. And most of all, I hope it really points you into your own dimension of stillness and peace within. Please consider, once again, if you're interested in practicing with us live online, please consider joining our Riverbird Sangha, and there's a link for you in the show notes for how you can go about doing that. Until next time, please stay safe, keep practicing, take care of yourself, stay strong, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Take good care.